This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Well, my friends, be careful what you say, be careful what you write, because at one point I must have said something in one of my emails about rock star this, rock star that. Who should respond except my next guest, genuine rock star, Mr. Cyndi Gennaro. Welcome to The Speaking Show.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, David.
So I remember this email that you sent, because I said, I use the word rock star a lot, right? Rock star speaker, rock star this, hey, you're a rock star. And you send me this great email saying, hey, if you ever want to have a real rock star on your show, give me a call, buddy, and I'll hop onto your program. So here you are. For the one or two people who do not know who you are, give us a very quick professional summary of your music career and then how you pivoted that into the speaking world.
Okay, I basically have played and recorded live and in the studio with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Cyndi Lauper, Johnny Winter, the Monkees, Diddley, amongst many, 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 many others. And my whole philosophy, I never really wore the rock star hat. You know, where you think of rock star, there's a side of a rock star where there's arrogance, you know, there's a insulation between him and the public. I've been amongst the people my whole life. And as a result of that, and there's many stories I could tell, every good thing that has come to me in my life, financially and personally, has come because I've gone out of my way to advance other people, make other people fortunate for having crossed my path. I treat my roadie the same way I treat the CEO of the star, and I treat the janitor the same way I treat the CEO. So I threw a drumstick to a handicapped person after a concert one day, and the husband Facebooks me the next day and says, you have no idea, you singled out my wife in a wheelchair, nobody ever pays attention to her, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to thank you in person. I go, what do you mean? Well, I'm coming to Nashville to do a speaking engagement, and I want to meet you for coffee and thank you in person. You really, really made a tremendous impression on my wife, you know, being on a big stage and whatever. So I met him for coffee. I told him I told him the David in the Doorway story, how I got Cyndi Lauper's gig. I told him how I got some other gigs. Fast forward to his presentation. I was on the side of the stage. He introduced me and he asked me out loud, can I tell the David Wolf story? Can I tell the Cyndi Lauper story, how you got that gig? And he instantly metamorphosized it to the lessons. He was speaking to the future leaders of the front office of the Nashville Predators hockey team at Bridgestone Arena. The story got a really good response, a lot of heads nodding and whatever. And then leaving that presentation, he says, hey, Cyndi, I'm speaking at the future leaders of FedEx in Memphis in a couple of weeks. It's a training session all day, but I'll get permission for you to be my guest and I'll give you 15 minutes. Tell the story yourself. I said, great. So I show up, told the story, and I noticed in between his training session, the meeting planner was plugging in her phone for overhead music during a break. While I'm waiting, I queued up time after time the song in my phone. He called me, introduced me. I told the Cyndi Lauper story, but I never mentioned her name. And I said, as a result of that and meeting my wife, I was kind to the guy, blah, 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 blah. I said I was involved with this song and it was the biggest tour that I ever did, et cetera, et cetera. I plugged in time after time started playing and it got a round of applause, like instant recognition of the song. Walking out of that FedEx meeting, Michael Pierce says to me, I think you have a future in front of you. If you want to, you have a tremendously powerful story. And that's only one of a few that I have. You have a career in front of you as a motivational speaker if you choose to, because you have obviously no problem speaking in front of audiences, which I have been doing in terms of drum clinics, my music business program at the music school that I used to teach at. So I've spoken to groups for years, but not corporate, just musicians and music business oriented people. So that's basically how I started. You know, my playing career kind of morphed into my speaking career. I'm still playing here in Nashville. I still have a studio. There's my studio here with the drum sets, and I have backline over there, amps and stuff like that. So I'm still fairly active. But now, as the years tick on, I've always wondered what I'm going to do when I don't want to go on a tour bus for 3 weeks at a time. I'm enjoying my home here in Nashville, whatever. I don't want to take up all your time, David, but that's basically how speaking found me, basically.
Right. Now, it's so funny that you said, hey, the CEO loved the story. He told the story. Then he gave me 15 minutes. Hey, Sandy, come on up here. You tell the story. And of course, on your website, you've got some great videos and your speaker reel. You are a natural, but I always like to ask people who come across as you are a natural, how did you learn it? Did you study? Did this just literally, like you're in that 1 or 2% who truly are natural? Because the way that you tell all of your stories, it is very authentic, very engaging, very real. That realness takes practice. So tell us a little bit about how did you learn the craft of storytelling and presenting?
Well, I learned the craft. Of course, I took some hints from my mentor, Mike Pierce, and he introduced me to a tech speaker in Canada named Gare Maxwell. He was like a tech speaker of the year, 1 year, whatever. So he helped me and him with Michael, whatever. But I took some advice from Michael, and then I went ahead and built a PowerPoint with some key things. And of course, as you know, from the very first gig I did, it's funny because the very first gig I did, if I could tell this story, was I was a counselor at a rock and roll fantasy camp where guys like you that play guitar or used to play drums in college, they want to meet Steven Tyler. So Steven Tyler is the headliner. For 5 days, I rehearsed these guys that used to play instruments. We learn 5 Aerosmith songs, and we go on stage at the finale, and Steven Tyler sings with all of us with the cameras out and whatever. And there's your little expanded meet and greet. That's all it is. So in one of these fantasy camps, there was a guitar player and whatever. He always kept in touch with me. He really liked me, sent me a Christmas card every year. I moved to Nashville, and he lost touch with me. So he finally finds me. And he was always, to be honest with you, David, he was always a little bit kind of like a fanboy, even though he was the head of Pacific Hotel Management, where they managed like 5 hotels in the Bay Area. He was a little annoying. He was to come to me at dinner and say, hey, does Cyndi really talk like that? Hey, does Joan Jett like boys or girls? Hey, So he was always kind of like a little flea, like a little kind of, get away from me. But anyway, he looked me up and I could have blew him off, but I didn't blow him off. He went through the trouble to search me out after I moved. I engaged him. And Sandy, what you been doing? Blah, blah, blah. I've been getting it. This is about 4 years ago. I'm getting into speaking, whatever. He goes, what do you speak about? And at that point, I had an acronym called BEATS, which was belief, enthusiasm, attitude, tenacity, and service. And whatever, I told him, he goes, you want to speak for my company? And he goes, what would you want to speak for my company? Fly out to California. This is, again, 4 years ago. I said, Clement, let me call you back. And I called Michael. Michael, I just got an offer to speak for pay. What should I charge? He goes, $5K. $5K. If he's used to having speakers, $5K is the bottom entry level. I go, okay. Called him back, Clement, $5K. He goes, all right, send me a contract. I'll send you the deposit, blah, blah, blah. That was my very, very first gig. So I jumped in, as my mother used to say, you want to learn how to swim? Jump in the pool. You'll learn how to swim. So I jumped in the pool. So from then, I just kind of honed it. I realized what worked. I passed out the evaluations. I got suggestions. I got da. And so I kind of honed it. And that's the way it's been from there. And I did a lot of, now that was an isolated gig. I didn't book a string of them.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show.
So after that one gig, Michael said, just take gigs and practice. You'll learn what works. Even though it works in your office, it may not work with the audience. You can test body language, et cetera, et cetera. So I started doing Rotaries, Chamber of Commerce's, these little 15, 20 member networking groups here in Nashville, And you've seen the list of clients that I've worked for. So I've just kind of built it like that. And that's it. And then the pandemic happened. And I had my two biggest months. I had like 5 paying speaking gigs between May and June of 20. And they got postponed to 21, or one became virtual and one canceled totally. So, we're dealing with that new wrinkle in the whole, fabric. So that's
I wanted to ask you, because I see several similarities between coming up in the music business and coming up in the speaking business, or just, going from like the 6-person rotary rubber chicken all the way to these big main stage with the, IMAG cameras and the lighting and the music and all this kind of stuff. When you're in some little dive bar or you're in front of 25,000 people in a stadium, you're still you. And the music is still the music. So tell us a little bit about what similarities you see kind of coming up in both worlds.
Well, you bring out a good point, because it is very, very similar. And the similarity, I live the similarity, because whether I am the type of player, whether I am in a bar with 5 people and we're 5 people and they're all talking to the bartender, nobody's paying attention. I play the same way as if I was in Madison Square Garden or opening for Queen in front of 110,000 people in Mannheim, Germany. I play the same way. Obviously, the feedback that you get from the audience and a live musical audience, the feedback that you get, it only lights the fire more. It's like a cycle of energy that you have with a live audience. And I find that with the speaker audience too. I've spoken to big groups, like 200, 250 people, and I've spoken to these little 10, 15 member networking groups. And the energy is the same. I prepare the same way, and I leave everything on the stage, so to speak.
For sure. It's funny. You probably have heard this story. It's a Rolling Stones story from, I guess, the 1960s, when they were famous, but not like super famous yet.
Right.
And this is, of course, a Charlie Watts story, drummer story. So he and Mick are having some kind of argument about something or something crazy. And Mick Jagger refers to Charlie as my drummer. And, Charlie's kind of a strange guy anyway, but so he goes quiet and then he explodes. This was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
Or the camel that broke the straw's back. But
right.
He says he gets up and he points his finger in Mick's face and he says, "Don't you ever say my drummer again. I am not your drummer. As a matter of fact, you are my singer."
Awesome.
Because, the drummer is the backbone of the operation.
That's correct.
It's like, you're not going to sing, dude. If I don't show up, guess what? You're not singing.
That's correct.
So the drummer is the pilot of the ship.
He's the engine of the car. Story.
So tell us a little bit, because, everyone says, oh, the drummer's in the back. The drummer's in the back. And no one realizes, like you and I realize, the drummer is really the backbone of the operation in a couple of different ways. How do you lead from the back? What's the lesson about leading from the back?
Well, you know what? You have the bird's eye seat or the cat seat, whatever the situation is, because you're usually on a riser, and you don't have to be on a riser, but you're looking at the back of everybody performing. So you are basically the engine of the car. Interesting, you told that Charlie Watts story. I've never heard that story, but I did hear a story about Keith Richards and Charlie Watts. How Keith Richards diplomatically put it, and it might have been after he was witness to what Charlie did to Mick, but he said, "I will not go on stage without Charlie Watts on the drum set," in a Rolling Stone environment. So that said the same thing, basically, but putting the onus on Charlie being the essence of why Keith wants to be there, as opposed to Mick says Charlie wants to be there because of me, or, is there because of me, whether it's the other way around. But I've always said that the band is only as good as its drummer, no matter where he is. If he's in the dark and it's the singer singing in the spotlight, if the drummer is playing, he's the backbone of the band, the heartbeat of the band, the engine of the car. You can have a very nice, shiny, little, handsome lead singer that sings great, a polished body. If the car doesn't run right, what's the car worth? How shiny the hubcaps are.
Right.
So
exactly. Well, let me go back to the speaking world for a second, because when people go to your website, one of the things, and it's a great website, by the way, but one of the things that makes it great is you are really skillful in using video. Tell us a little bit about how that video asset has played into your world and why you invested in such great video and sort of what people can learn from that.
In terms of my drumming and my music career, I've always, since the early days, carried a still camera. And then when video cameras came out, the big clunky little VHS that you put the VHS tape and carry it on your shoulder, I took those on the road. So long story short, in the next room, I have drawers full of DVDs from every tour that I did, backstage moments of the artist or whatever. I treasure trove. And I was always told from the beginning, in terms of the speaking, to videotape, even if it's what your phone, videotape all your performances, not only to look at them afterwards to see how you feel and how you look delivering certain messages, but you be able to edit and take the golden moments out of that and use it for marketing and promo. That's basically why I record all the speaking. And as the money got a little better, I hired, 2 camera HD shoots instead of a phone and like that, So I was told that video is the mode of the future. Everybody's going to plug into video. And as you could see it on Instagram now and Facebook, and LinkedIn is allowing video and all of that. So I found a app called Handbrake that I have a laptop that's kind of dated. It's all updated internally, but the hardware is dated. I kept it because it has a DVD insert. And this Handbrake app, I can insert any DVD, download it onto my laptop, drag it into Handbrake, and it turns it into a QuickTime video, which I'm able to take a little snippet. That's why in social media, if you see like 10 seconds of me speaking or 15 seconds of a drum solo, that's how I do it. And I've created a nice little catalog of those little 10, 15 second up to a minute snippets that whether speaking or playing. And the thing that I've kind of thought about that I'm getting good reaction to, let's say there's a song I don't just post like songs just for the entertainment value. Or here's the Monkees singing I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. But I try to correlate it with a lesson, with a takeaway. Hey, listen, here's this little clip of Stepping Stone. And by the way, don't let anybody step on you either. If you feel, stand up for your rights. And, if you see something awry, make sure you speak out about it. Don't hold it in and then complain about it later. You know what I mean? I try to correlate a little lesson with even a musical clip. I think video is very, very important. And I think it's a mode of communication. If it's already here, but it's going to replace all other modes, I think. I think video is very important.
For sure. Another guest put it this way, said, video is the new black.
Yeah, right.
Video is the new black, that we all need to be doubling down on video.
Right.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Now, you mentioned earlier when you first got started that you had this, speaking of methodology and takeaways from your programs, you mentioned BEATS, right? BEATS. Did that then transform, or do we change that over? How did that evolve, or what's the methodology today that you're teaching people?
Yeah, and your opinion, it too matters with this, because I used to call my program the BEATS program. And it was suggested by a few trusted people that, to use an acronym as a title of your program is kind of like dated. Yeah. So if you can come up with a title that you could use the acronym within your presentation as a way to remember certain bullet points or whatever, but don't title it that. So come up with a call to action, something that is on your to-do list, something like that. So I came up with Beat the Odds. It's got the word beat in it. Yeah, during the presentation, I add the S as the most important aspect is service to others. So that's how Beat the Odds was born. It still has something to do with beats, and beats has something to do with, but it's all beating the odds. I mean, the odds of making a living as a musician solely playing music for longer than 1 year is 1 in a million. And I started from less than zero, and I climbed out of that hole, and I had the faith and belief, and I had the enthusiasm. I wanted that view from the drum set that Ringo had at the Ed Sullivan Show with the girls going crazy. I didn't know what the hell that was, but I'm in when I saw that. And that was the light that lit my fire. So I had the enthusiasm, I had the tenacity, I had the belief in myself and my ability, and I had the belief in the higher power, the power that is at work in all our lives behind the scenes. But, we ignite the flame, but the higher power sets the fire. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not autonomous going through this, David, as you well probably are aware. And we're connected to another, I don't want to get too much into that. I know religion is kind of off base when you're dealing with speaking, but it's a spiritual kind of knowing that we are not alone here.
Totally right. Spot on. I wanted to ask you, Cyndi, did you grow up playing the drums, or what other instruments were you interested in, or do you still play?
I was never interested in any other instrument. I got a drum at 3 years old, and I still have the drum in my sitting. There's a little toy drum, and I still have it, and that lit the fire. My dad played big band music around the apartment and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then fast forward, I've never actually seen a drummer play until the Ed Sullivan Show. I was always attracted to rhythm. I was tapping, dancing with the butter knife on the table and being told to stop, whatever. And then when I saw the Ringo play, I always pictured myself at the drum set from Ringo's point of view, looking out at the audience. And that's the image that was burned in my brain. And I used to think about it going to bed, waking up, whatever. And I begged my mother for a drum set. It's kind of a long story, but I won't go into it here. But a year later, she goes, save your allowance and we'll see how bad you want a drum set. So I saved my allowance. And for some reason, I have the receipt in my office. My mother left it to me. Don't ask me why. She took me from Staten Island to a music store in Manhattan on New Year's Eve, 1965. And I had the receipt, new drum set, whatever. And then from the new drum set, I started practicing. I took lessons or whatever. I was invited to join this little high school band playing high school dances, learning from, Beatles records and Stones and The Who and Cream and whatever. That's basically where it started. And I never really looked back. I never thought well, maybe I should play bass. It wasn't even a conscious thing. It was so natural for me to be in a band and to play, and the performance part of it with everybody looking at you playing and coming up to you afterwards and whatever. And, it was a nice little medium, a social medium. I loved it. And one thing, the dominoes kept falling. It was one thing after another. You get off a big tour. Okay, what's next? You're sitting in your house. There's nothing going on. And whatever, everybody's got to work a day job as a musician, especially if you're a freelance 1099 guy.
Yeah.
And how I got my teaching career at the Drummers Collective, which was my day job in between tours, playing music and teaching music, happened as a result of me doing somebody a favor. So it all works hand in hand. It's like you take the initiative to help advance, engage other people. I've been given a gift. I've been associated with some famous people. People now reach out to me. Hey, Cyndi, could you do this little Zoom call and raise money for cancer, or the Breast Cancer Can Stick It, or the Country Women's Cancer Fund, or Dana-Farber, or the Jimmy Fund, and I'm always open to doing that. And I do it willingly, not as a chore, because I've been given a gift and I could use that gift to help other people. And that's the gist. That's the whole gist.
Yeah.
And the financial part of it, David, comes as a byproduct of you doing good things, because you make the effort, you have the mindset, the positive mindset, you make the effort, and things happen beyond your control to enable you to keep doing. You become a channel for good. And the money, you keep the lights on, that's a byproduct of what your activity. It's not the objective, it's a byproduct.
For sure. Well, and it's funny because this is a theme that really runs through your whole life, right? And this is the David Wolf story. And this is about kindness, about generosity, about paying attention. Because really, I think one of the lessons that you teach and that you model is we need to be aware minute by minute, moment by moment. When do we have an opportunity to be generous? When do we have an opportunity to slow down, look at what someone else is asking of us, what someone else needs, what someone else wants, what would make someone else happy? How can you reach back a hand, a helping hand, and give someone the next leg up on the ladder? And it always ends up, it seems, it always ends up in very surprising, amazing, and very powerful ways, not just for them, but for you. Like you said, every good thing that's happened to you has come as a result of doing some random kindness, unnecessary kindness, kindnesses where other people might not even pay attention to the opportunity that they could have to have an impact of saying yes instead of saying no, instead of stopping, instead of keep walking, walk by someone as opposed to kind of engage with them and be present with them for a few minutes of kindness and generosity. And you mentioned at the top of our interview today, you said this is kind of like the anti-rock star. Because when we say rock star, it's usually about ego or arrogance or complacency or entitlement.
Security.
Yeah. Everything that you teach, everything that you've lived is sort of the antithesis of that. And I just want to acknowledge you and congratulate you because there is such tremendous power there. What would you say, just as we're wrapping up our conversation today, if there was one thing to take away from that spirit of generosity, that spirit of paying attention, that spirit of constantly being aware of opportunities to give and opportunities to help, how would you encapsulate that? And what should the big takeaway for us be listening to you?
The big takeaway to me is that no one is insignificant. No one is insignificant. Again, I engage the janitor the same way the CEO. I treat my roadie and everybody. It's in conjunction with the recognition of the totem pole, the chain of command. Yeah, I'm the drummer that's going to be playing in front of 20,000 people tonight. You're the guy that sets my drums up and tunes them. So yeah, there's a certain kind of hierarchy that you have to respect as the roadie. But as the rock star drummer, you give that person lower than you on the totem pole the equal amount of respect that I would give Cyndi Lauper. You respect them as a person because that's what ties all of us together. The big picture, David, is that we cut ourselves, it's a cliche, but we all bleed red.
Amen. Could not agree more. I love that. Well, Cyndi, this has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. Where can we send people if they want to connect with more Cyndi Gennaro brilliance?
Okay, you can connect me with on my website, which is candygennaro.com. It's Genn like Nancy ARO. I have a Facebook page, Cyndi Gennaro. I have another Facebook page, Cyndi Gennaro Speaks. I have a LinkedIn page, actually two LinkedIn pages. One is Cyndi Gennaro, one is Cyndi Gennaro Speaks. And a for fun Instagram page. My on Facebook, the Cyndi Gennaro Speaks, is Rock and Roll Thought Leader. But David, listen, before we go, I want to thank you for your time because, you have better things to do with your 45 minutes or however long we're on. But I do appreciate your time. Keep the emails coming. And it's great what you do. And you're different than a lot of people because their reasoning for doing stuff like this and giving out free, yes, you want people to join your program, but it's not in your face. And that's what I appreciated. You get on one call and then 10 minutes into the call, they go, okay, well, I offer this and this and this, and they're giving the marketing pitch. That's okay. And I realize why they do it, but it's not the very apparent reason why you do it. And that's much appreciated. If you want something, you give it away.
Absolutely. Huge believer in that, right? The more that we give, and it's not even give to get, it's just give for the sake of giving, and the universe will take care of the rest. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.